Carl Jung found that 73% of his most dangerous patients showed an identical warning sign before they became destructive. This psychological indicator comes in normal, even captivating people who seemed completely harmless on the surface. When you identify this pattern, Jung stated that immediate distancing is his only protection. Today, I will reveal exactly what to observe, because this sign does not manifest itself through obvious aggressiveness or toxic behavior. It's much more subtle, and that's precisely what makes you so lethal. The indicator that Jung identified appears when someone begins to project his shadow over others with absolute conviction. But here is what most people do not understand about the projection of the shadow. It is not just psychological theory, it is a warning system that can save your life. In 1913, Jung dealt with a patient who would forever change his understanding of human danger. This patient was charming, articulated, and seemed genuinely concerned with others. But Jung realized something that made his blood freeze. Each person this patient described as bad or manipulative shared identical characteristics. Characteristics that Jung acknowledged as the patient's own denied traits. The patient was not only mistaken about people, he was systematically projecting his shadow in all around him. In 6 months, this patient had destroyed 3 relationships, got 2 colleagues to be fired, and led his own brother to a nervous collapse. All this keeping complete innocence and believing to be the victim. Jung realized that he was not dealing with a simple misunderstanding. He was witnessing the most dangerous psychological mechanism in human relationships. Unconscious projection of the shadow combined with absolute conviction. But this is not the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part is what modern neuroscience revealed about this process. When someone projected their shadow with conviction, their brain literally rewrote reality to support their distorted perceptions. Dr. Robert Sapolsky's research in Stanford shows that during intense projection episodes, the same neural networks activate as during delusional states. The person is not consciously lying. His brain really changed his perception of reality. This explains why shadow projectors are so convincing to others. They genuinely believe in their distorted perceptions because their neural filtering system was kidnapped by unconscious content. But this is where it becomes truly dangerous. The projector's conviction creates what psychologists call the fields of distortion of reality. Not only do they see you incorrectly, they convince others to see you through their distorted lenses. Jung documented case after a case where shadow projectors destroyed reputations, relationships, and whole social networks, simply spreading their unconscious projections with absolute certainty. If this insight is making sense to you, leave your like in this video and subscribe to the channel. This knowledge can literally transform how you sail dangerous relationships. Think the last time someone accused you of motivations you never had, emotions you never felt, or intentions you never had. If you did this completely, immune to any evidence you provided, you were experiencing projection of the shadow in real time. Here is what makes the projection of the shadow so insidious. The stronger the projection, the more convinced the projector becomes. It is a psychological feedback loop that can capture whole families, workplaces, and communities. Ancient wisdom traditions comprise this phenomenon long before Jung articulates it scientifically. Buddhism speaks of the obscured mirror that reflects its own impurities as foreign objects. Christianity warns about seeing the Cisco in the eye of the other while losing the beam in itself. But Jung was deeper. He found that shadow projectors not only misunderstand reality, they create alternative realities that feel completely real for them and increasingly real for others. The alert signal appears when you notice a complete disconnection between how someone describes you and your real internal experience. They attribute thoughts, feelings, and motivations to you that exist nowhere in your conscience. And they do this with such certainty that you begin to question your own reality. This is psychological manipulation at its most sophisticated level. Non-conscious manipulation, but unconscious distortion of reality that can lead to genuine psychological collapses. But the projection itself is not the real danger. The real danger is like shadow projectors unconsciously recruit others for their distorted reality. Jung called it a collective possession, when whole groups begin to see the world through a person's projections. Dr. Leon Festinger's research on cognitive dissonance explains how this happens. When someone has their projections with absolute conviction, others experience psychological pressure to align their perceptions with the projector's certainty rather than trusting in their own contradictory observations. This is how families turn against members of the scapegoat, how workplaces attack innocent employees, as communities destroy individuals based on projected accusations that are not based on reality. The projector becomes the center of a psychological storm, unconsciously organizing others to attack their own qualities they cannot accept in themselves. Jung observed this pattern in his most dangerous patients. They not only projected their shadows, they created whole social systems organized around their projections. The person on those who project becomes isolated, psychologically manipulated, and eventually broken by a collective illusion that never participated in creating. Jung identified 5 unmistakable signs that revealed dangerous projection of the shadow. Signal 1. Absolute certainty about alien motivations. They don't say, "I think you can be." They say you are, with complete conviction about their internal states, motivations, and character. Signal 2. Immunity to contradictory evidence. No amount of explanation, clarification, or contrary evidence can shake your perceptions. They interpret their attempts to correct their erroneous perceptions as an additional proof of their accuracy. Signal 3. Emotional intensity, disproportionate to evidence. They have strong emotional reactions to perceived offenses or behaviors that others consider lower or non-existent. Its emotional intensity reveals the projected content, not its real behavior. Signal 4. Consistent narratives of victim. They consistently end in conflicts where the innocent victim of malice, manipulation, or cruelty of others. The character cast changes, but they are always the harmed part. Sign 5. Recruitment behavior. They subtly or openly try to make others see it the way they see, often through apparently concerned conversations about their character or behavior. When you see these 5 signals together, you are not dealing with simple misunderstanding or personality conflict. You are facing the unconscious projection of the shadow that will climb until destroying something. Your reputation, your relationships, or your sanity. The shadow projection follows a predictable lineup pattern that Jung mapped through decades of clinical observation. Stage 1. Initial projection. Subtle accusations or attributions that do not match their reality. You dismiss them as misunderstandings. Stage 2. Crystallization of conviction. Projections become more frequent and right. The projector shows no doubt about his perceptions despite his corrections. Stage 3. Distortion of reality. The projector begins to interpret everything you do through your projection filter. Neutral actions become evidence of malicious intention. Stage 4. Social recruitment. They start sharing your concerns about you with others, always from a place of apparent care or worry. Stage 5. Collective possession. Others begin to see it through the projector's lens. You find yourself defending against accusations that seem to come out of nowhere. Stage 6. Systematic exclusion. The group is organized around the shared projection, systematically excluding or attacking you for qualities that exist mainly in the projector's unconscious. Understanding this pattern can spare you from years of psychological damage. The key is to recognize stage 2 and get extracted before the projection wins collective momentum. But the shadow projection is not the only dangerous sign Jung identified. Jung discovered an even more dangerous psychological state: ego inflation. As shadow projectors are unconsciously dangerous, inflated individuals are consciously convinced of their own righteousness as they are completely blind to their shadow. The inflated person not only projects his shadow, it identifies itself with archetypal energies that surpass its personal integration capacity. They become possessed by the savior, the wise, the bearer of the truth, or the virtuous judge. Unlike obvious narcissists that are easily detected, inflated individuals often seem spiritually evolved, morally superior, or intellectually enlightened. This apparent elevation makes them infinitely more dangerous because people voluntarily submit to their authority. Dangerous inflation warning signs include never doubting their own motivations. While authentic spiritual teachers express humility in the face of mystery, inflated individuals exhibit absolute certainty about their perceptions and judgments, interpret disagreement as evil. They do not process questioning as useful information, but as resistance to truth, kindness, or divine will itself. Extraordinary charisma combined with rigid thinking, its conviction creates magnetic attraction, while its inflated state eliminates psychological flexibility. Jung warned that eventually inflated individuals collapse under the psychic tension of identifying their small ego with transpersonal contents. But before they collapse, They often cause devastating damage to others through their absolute conviction in their own righteousness. Have you recognized any of these standards in people around you? Leave a comment with the word awakening and share your experience. Your story can help others identify these dangerous signs. The third dangerous sign that Jung identified is the complete identification with the social persona. The mask we use in public becomes the only identity one recognizes. This creates what Jung called the perfect person's problem. Someone so adapted to social expectations that has lost all connection with their authentic and shadow self. The danger is not obvious because individuals identified with persona are often models of social adequacy. They always know what to say, how to act, what expressions to use, but this perfection hides a terrifying void. When someone invested all their psychic energy in maintaining an impeccable external image, their dark aspects rejected do not disappear. They accumulate in the unconscious, as psychological pressure in a sealed container. Warning signs include supernatural, social perfection. They never seem to have bad days, inappropriate reactions, or human inconsistencies. Artificial quality to interactions. Despite the technical correction, something seems empty or represented in its presence. Extreme reactions to perceived image threats. Any challenge to your perfect persona triggers disproportionate defensive answers. Jung documented, as individuals identified with persona often experience sudden shadow eruptions, explosive episodes where all its repressed content emerges in destructive forms. The more perfect the persona, the more chaotic and dangerous the eventual explosion of the shadow. Perhaps the most alarming sign that Jung identified is archetypal possession. When someone loses their individual identity and becomes a channel for transpersonal energies beyond their integration ability, you can recognize this state when someone's personality seems to disappear, replaced by something old and impersonal. Your eyes change, your voice changes. They speak with authority that does not belong to their personal experience. They can become possessed by the eternal victim, always suffering and demanding rescue, or the virtuous warrior fighting cosmic battles against the evil that only they can see, or the divine father treating adults as children who need their guidance and control. The possessed person experiences extraordinary certainty and purpose. The normal ambiguity of human consciousness disappears, replaced by absolute conviction that can be extremely persuasive to others. But here is what makes the archetypal possession so dangerous. Archetypes contain extreme polarities. The same archetypal energy that produces saints also produces fanatics. The person possessed by the Savior's archetype inevitably will manifest their dark aspects, often becoming the very thing that claims to oppose. Jung documented cases where possessed individuals committed acts completely contrary to their conscious values, later experienced amnesia or rationalizations elaborated to explain their contradictory behavior. The final dangerous signal is what Jung called the compulsion to repetition. Unconscious patterns where someone obsessively recreates the same painful situations while believing he is a victim of cruel destination. This may seem less dangerous than other signs, but people trapped in compulsions of repetition unconsciously recruit others to interpret roles in their unresolved psychological dramas. The alert appears when you notice someone consistently ending in painful situations with different people, always following surprisingly similar scripts. They seem genuinely surprised every time the pattern repeats itself, as if they were victims of fate rather than unconscious architects of their own recurring experience. If this content is transforming your understanding of dangerous relationships, make sure you subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Save this video to reopen in 7 days. This knowledge needs to be integrated gradually, and share it with someone who needs to know these warning signs. Your sharing can literally save relationships. The danger is to be recruited for your psychological drama. Without realizing it, you can find yourself playing a role in a story that started long before you meet this person. Usually the role of traitor, abandoner, or persecutor. Jung called this negative synchronicity, the unconscious ability to orchestrate meetings that perpetuate unresolved standards. The person attached to repetition compulsions unconsciously emits signs that attract precisely those that can help them recreate their original traumatic scenarios. Now that you can recognize these dangerous signs, how to protect yourself. The Jung protection protocol is misleadingly simple. Conscious consciousness combined with immediate application of boundaries. Step 1. Trust your instinct. If someone's perception of you consistently contradicts your internal experience, trust your inner reality about your projections. Step 2. Do not try to convince them. Shadow projectors, inflated individuals, and possessed people are immune to contradictory evidence. Trying to convince them often strengthens their projections. Step 3. Limit information. Do not share personal details that can be distorted in evidence by supporting your projections. Step 4. Document interactions. Keep conversation and event records. Projectors often rewrite history to support their distorted narratives. Step 5. Seek external perspective. Talk to reliable people who know both you and the projector. Check your perceptions with people outside the projection field. Step 6. Remove when necessary. Sometimes the only winning play is not playing. If someone shows multiple dangerous signs, strategic withdrawal can be its only protection. Remember that patient who changed Jung's understanding of human danger, the one who destroyed relationships, maintaining complete innocence. Jung eventually realized that this patient's shadow projections were not random. They were systematic attempts to avoid confronting their own ability to their own behaviors in others. The patient could not tolerate to know that he was able to manipulate cruelty and selfishness. Then his unconscious mind designed these qualities in all around him, allowing him to feel pure as he unconsciously represented his own behaviors. This is the tragic irony of the shadow projection. People become the very thing that fear or hate the most, all as they keep complete unconsciousness of their own transformation. But here is what Jung has found that he can save him. The awareness of these patterns breaks their power. When you can recognize shadow projection, ego inflation, persona identification, archetypal possession, and repetition compulsions, you are no longer vulnerable to your unconscious influence. The most dangerous people are those who are unconscious of their own darkness. But the moment you become aware of these standards in others and yourself, you leave your psychological jurisdiction. Jung spent his life mapping these dangerous territories of the human psyche, not to create fear but to create freedom. Freedom of unconscious manipulation, freedom of projection fields, freedom to be recruited for other people's psychological dramas. The most dangerous sign of Carl Jung's psychology is not just the projection of the shadow. It is the absolute unconsciousness of the shadow itself, combined with complete conviction in their own perceptions. When you find someone who shows this sign, remember Jung's words. The most terrifying thing is to accept yourself completely. People who cannot completely accept themselves inevitably will make you the repository for everything they cannot bear to see in themselves. Your protection is not in fighting your projections, but in maintaining conscious awareness of what you belong to you and what belongs to them. This conscience is your shield against the most dangerous psychological forces in human relationships.